I'd like you to imagine your dream life. See the version of you who has what you want to have, feels how you want to feel, and is who you want to be. I'm Brittany Hoops, your hypnotherapist and manifestation coach, and this is the show where I'll teach you to master the full power of your mind, to guide you on your journey towards destination manifestation.
Yeah, take a step back. For the ones who can do that.
I love how I do the same dance every time. If you're watching the YouTube videos, you know I like to dance to that fun little intro song for the Destination Manifestation podcast. Fun fact, this song is by an artist that I found on SoundCloud called A Cubed, a very, very nice guy. And I just fell in love with it and wondered why in the world he isn't world famous by now. Hopefully he will be someday soon, hopefully because of the show. And I messaged him and was just like, hey, I'm obsessed with your music. Would you be open if I sampled some of it as the intro and outro to my podcast? And he was super kind and allowed me to pay him probably not enough money to, have the exclusive sort of podcast rights for this. And now I get to play it every day on the show. And I've used it for gosh, how many episodes are we up to now? Probably like mid 40s, right? I don't know. I don't keep track. And I love the song and I just think it captures the essence of the Destination Manifestation show. So shout out to A Cubed. You should check out his music. I'll link to him in the show notes so that you can check him out. But I just want to say hello to you all today, you wonderful travelers. Welcome back to Destination Manifestation. Are we there yet? I'm like the little kid in the back of the car. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Well, rest assured, if you've been listening to the show, you are certainly getting closer and closer to that destination that you seek. You're getting closer and closer to your dreams. In fact, technically, I would say your manifestation is already here. And so now your only job becomes, how can you align to it? And that's what this podcast is for. I mean, that's the whole purpose. It's to help you do just that. So today we're going to tackle a biggie. I feel like I always say that because I always think everything is a big thing. But this one is particularly big. These two, actually. I wouldn't be surprised if I looked in my session notes across all the, hundreds of sessions that I do a year. I wouldn't be surprised if these two topics that we're going to talk about today come up at some point during every single one of my one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching programs that I conduct with my clients. Like, these topics are number one and number two in terms of what we work on the most, and it's fear and self-doubt. And they kind of go hand in hand, right? To doubt yourself and your abilities can lead to a lot of fearful feelings. Feelings like you're not enough, that you're not trusting yourself, you're not trusting the circumstances around you, feeling like you need to control every little thing because you lack the confidence of knowing or trusting what would otherwise, work for you and soothe you, right? But I want you to know that if you feel this fear, I should say, that it's very normal and it's very natural to have kind of these little pesky things pop up in your mind as you are on this journey towards your destination manifestation. It's normal to encounter fear and self-doubt when you take on a big goal. It's just kind of part of the game, just kind of how it's normal to encounter a speed bump or a pothole as you're driving a car. These are normal things. But we gotta still watch out for them. They could still mess up your tire rotation. They could still send you flying, if you take that speed bump too fast. But they're normal things. We just have to be careful around them. In fact, I would actually say that's one of the first signs, at least for me, that tells me that you're reaching for big and beautiful goals and dreams. It's stretching you beyond your comfort zone. When you feel fear and you feel self-doubt, I know that means that you've picked a goal that's no longer kind of in your comfort zone, a goal that's no longer something you've already achieved, right? You've picked something that's growing you. And so if you came up to me and said, yeah, Brittany, I've never been scared about my goals. I've never questioned if I could do them. I'd be a little hesitant. I'd be a little, tell me more about that, right? Because that would tell me that you just simply haven't made your goals big enough yet. You're staying in your comfort zone. And I'm sorry, that's one thing I can tell you as I pull out the map towards destination manifestation. Comfort zone and destination manifestation are not in the same location. They're on opposite sides of the map. But it's by stretching yourself that you grow, that you can prove to yourself that you can take on more and more than you previously thought was possible. And that's a really good thing. But we don't want that fear and self-doubt to consume you, right? It's kind of like lifting weights at the gym, okay? You pick a weight that's heavy enough, that's going to fatigue your muscles with enough reps, but you don't want to be so heavy to cause damage or injury to your body, right? So letting fear and self-doubt take over is the equivalent of causing that sort of damage. That's the injury that we want to avoid. But the answer doesn't mean, I want to avoid injury, so let's just not ever go to the gym. Let's just never lift weights, right? No. That's how we grow our trust muscle. And I guess in this example, I mean literally, when we talk about weightlifting and growing muscles, right? But figuratively, we build the trust muscle so that it can handle fear and self-doubt when it comes up. It can expand its trust and knowing and capability to handle whatever comes its way. So today, I want to teach you several things. I want to teach you kind of the 3-step process on eliminating fear and self-doubt and replacing it with what you want instead. And I also want to teach you some of my favorite hypnotherapeutic techniques that sort of pair with this 3-step process. That's going to really help you overcome fear and self-doubt so you can be living the life you want to live with your manifestations. So let's start with step 1, right? The first step is to get clear. Well, actually, this is like step 1A, I would say. It's kind of like what you do before you even start the steps, okay? I should have been a little clearer about that. The first kind of step 1A is to get clear about what it is that you're so afraid of. Now, you might be kind of laughing at me being like, yeah, that's super easy. I know what I'm afraid of. Or you might not. Your fear might consciously be known to you, or it might not. I would say that fear sort of pokes its head out in a lot of different ways. You might have a fear that you can identify, like, I'm scared that if I pursue this big goal, I'll be no good at it, or I'm not good enough. That's a common fear. You might have the fear that your life might change too much, that it would become too busy or too overwhelming if you reach this goal. I know I definitely had that fear when I first started my business. Here I had spent, all my 20s, some of the best years of your life, right? I'd spent all my 20s working these awful marketing consulting jobs that just sort of consumed my life. They had horrendous hours. I knew I wanted to start my own business, right? And work for myself. But I was terrified. I was terrified that in order to be successful in business, that it would require the same sort of torturous schedule that I had endured over the last decade in marketing and in consulting. So it didn't feel safe to put myself in a situation in this new unknown job where I didn't know the hours that it would take to be successful. And so at the very beginning, when I first started, I found myself not working as hard as I could, not working as much as I could, because I didn't want to cross that line of exhaustion. I was so scared to get close to that line of exhaustion that I hung I hung hours and feet back from it just to not even get close to it. And that felt very scary and very unsafe to me. But with some hypnotherapy and some coaching, I realized, hey, I'm the creator here. I talk about this a lot with my clients. Like, I ask, are you playing offense or are you playing defense? Now, this isn't the best analogy, and I've been working on it, okay? But I'm not a sports girly, and I know you guys can tell that by my knowledge of sports. But my husband is a professional sports analyst, so I have picked up a few things here or there, right? So I'm going to kind of describe to this from a non-sports player perspective. And if you play sports, you can correct me. But if you play defense, right, generally, and I know it depends on what sport you're playing, that means you're defending yourself, your turf, right? Of course, it depends on the sport that you're playing, but usually you're trying to keep the other team from gaining your ground. You're trying to block the other team. You're trying to defend your space, your turf, your ball, whatever it might be. You're trying to keep the other team from moving forward. You aren't the one necessarily moving forward. You're simply trying to keep what you have or keep the other team from gaining too much. But when you play offense, that's when you're the one who's charting a new path forward. You are determining what you want. You're putting the pressure on the other team. You are deciding. You're making moves. And this applies to manifestation too. So a lot of times I find that we fall into defense mode, where we assume that we're at the effect of the other team, that we're at the effect of the world around us. And this is when we give fear our power. So in my example, I thought the job would decide my hours. If I'm, as I sort of think about this, if I'm sort of in a tough love kind of mood, I don't call it defense anymore. I call this sort of wet rag mode. It is also known as being in reactor mode. It's also known as being in victim mode. Okay? These aren't the nicest terms, but it's kind of when you crumple up and you fall over and you're just like a little wet rag. If you're watching the YouTube video, you can see my wet rag impersonation, okay? You let everyone and everything else decide for you, and then you usually complain about what you think they decided. But we don't play defense in manifestation. You aren't a wet rag, okay? I'm drying you out right now. No more wet rag. No more victimhood. No more reactivity. We are deliberate creators, meaning we're on the offense. We're the ones determining and charting the path. We are deciding. We have the power. And so once I got out of that kind of fearful wet rag mode, I chuckled because I realized, wait, who's the CEO of Brittany Hoops Hypnotherapy and Coaching? Like, who is she? Can I talk to the boss? Oh, wait, it's me. My job doesn't decide my hours. I decide my hours. I'm creating the business and the job. And so therefore, I have the power to make sure those hours don't cross into exhaustion land. I don't have to worry about them crossing into exhaustion land because I'm in control of it. And I could understand. I can give my brain some grace here, right? That wasn't always the case. I wasn't used to having that kind of control. That wasn't a power that I had with my old consulting jobs, but it's a power I have now. And so I don't have to fear and hold myself back from giving it my all and fear that I'll become exhausted. No, I get to decide what feels good here and give it just that. And when I recognized and eliminated that fear, that's when I realized my power, and poof, I started working more and working harder because I realized that if I found myself getting too close to that limit, well, guess what? I was the one in charge, and it was in my control to be able to push back or pull back, I guess I should say. So instead of needing to keep 50 feet away from the exhaustion line, I could keep 5 feet away from it and know and trust that I'm not going to cross that line where I would feel exhausted. I can do more because I get to decide where I am in relation to it. I was in the driver's seat. And that's a great destination manifestation analogy for you. When you're in offense mode, you are in the driver's seat. When you're in defense, wet rag mode, you think that you're in the passenger seat. Only, guess what, guys? We are only ever in the driver's seat. And I will tell you, it is much harder and much more dangerous to try to drive that car from the passenger seat. You're leaning over. You can't see everything. No wonder you feel so out of control trying to drive from the passenger seat. I want you driving from the driver's seat. We want you, as the deliberate manifestors that you are, to always remember and to claim your power here. Okay? That's what we want with all of this. So, Maybe you know that fear has got you doubting yourself and your dreams. Sometimes fear can come up in different forms. I would say one of the most common forms is the form of procrastination. If we're fearing something or if we're doubting ourselves, it's very hard to get ourselves to go take action towards our dreams when we're feeling those emotions. Those are not the kind of emotions that power action typically, right? I'll have clients that come to me and they'll be like, Brittany, I really want to make $3 million in my business this year. That's my goal. Okay. I want to triple my salary this next year. I know what to do. Like logically, I know what to do. I've mapped it out. I have a plan. I have the to-do list. I mean, usually if you're at that income level, you do have an idea of what to do, but sometimes you don't. We coach on that too. That's why I offer coaching as well. You don't have to know what to do, but in this case, I'm giving you, they do know what to do, right? I know what to do. I have my to-do list, and yet I can't get myself to stop watching TV during my lunch break. Like I'll set out and just say that I'm going to take a 30-minute break and just watch a 30-minute sitcom. But then that 30-minute break turns into a 3-hour break, and it's every single day. And logically, I know that's not what is going to help me get to where I want to go. So help, Brittany. How can I make it stop? Why am I procrastinating here? And so we can see that this procrastination here is sort of a costume that the fear is wearing to try to sneak past us. Sneaky little fear trying to wear that costume. But we know better. So we have subconscious mind tools at our disposal that can help us understand this fear. And that's another reason why I freaking love hypnotherapy, guys. It is so good. It helps us identify and reprogram those sneaky little fears, meaning the ones that we think we might not even be consciously aware of, the ones that manifest in our lives simply as bad habits or inaction or procrastination or whatever it might be. So this is what I love, is that you don't have to consciously know the fear. You can see how the fear is manifesting in your life, and then we can kind of work backwards from there in the subconscious mind. So one of my favorite hypnotherapeutic techniques to identify these sneaky fears is to bring them from the subconscious and draw them into our conscious awareness is something that I like to use called parts therapy. Now, I know I've talked about this on the show before because it's so powerful and it can be used in so many different ways. But in a one-on-one hypnotherapy session, what we do is we essentially talk to the part of you that is fearful, or the part of you that procrastinates, or the part of you that's been doubting, whatever it is, right? And I freaking love this technique because it's so enlightening. It allows us to understand things that were once subconscious, meaning not in our conscious awareness. And it's usually very surprising. And sometimes it's a little funny too. Like it can catch us off guard, be like, what? Like, what is the subconscious mind saying to us? And then later it makes sense and you're like, oh, okay. That's interesting. So like, why it is this way is because it's opening that portal of communication between you and your subconscious mind, which is where your belief systems, your automatic processes, your habits, so many things. 95% of your brain functions exist in the subconscious mind, are run by the subconscious mind. It's a very important part of your mind. And so in hypnotherapy, our subconscious minds love to speak to us through images and symbols. Okay? You already experience this when you have dreams at night. Usually those dreams are very symbolic. There's images. Sometimes they don't make sense. It's your subconscious mind reconsolidating memories and lessons and messages for you and through you while your subconscious mind gets to run the show as you sleep. Right? So when we do parts therapy, sometimes these parts can show up looking and feeling kind of like all sorts of little things, right? I'll tell you a funny story about this. I don't think I've told this story on the show, at least not in a very long time if I haven't. I did a parts therapy personally very early on in my career as a hypnotherapist. And this session was about my business, right? Where the part that I was wanting to connect with and understand was the part of me that runs my business. And this part appeared in such a funny way. It appeared in the form of a 1998 Microsoft Word paperclip. Do you remember that little cartoon guy, Clippy, I think was his name? And it really made me laugh, even during the session, because this session was in 2021, right? I hadn't seen or thought of Clippy consciously since I was in second grade, right? But it was very enlightening to see that this part of me that ran my business came forth in this way. Because guess what, guys? Clippy was overwhelmed. He needed to be upgraded. He needed updated systems. He needed these updated things to be successful in running my business. He couldn't operate in the same Windows 98 that he had been operating in, right? And wouldn't you know, I was running my business part-time at the time. I was growing it, but I didn't have the kind of systems in place that would allow me to grow it full-time, which was my goal. And that particular session, that one single session, really taught me that once I got those systems solidly in place and I was able to, to receive that guidance on what those systems needed to be, where I needed to make those upgrades, Clippy, otherwise known as the part of my brain that runs my business, would then feel safe enough to allow me to grow. It just needed reinforcement. It needed updating. It needed support. And after that realization from that particular session, I made those changes. I made those updates, those upgrades, and boom, that's how I went full-time in my business within 6 months. It happened very rapidly, very fast. And I gave myself what I needed. The funny thing is I'm so thankful for that session, because if I just would have used my conscious mind, I wouldn't have known what I needed. I needed to get in touch with my subconscious mind to know what I truly needed. And, I still remember that session 4 years later. It really kind of set the course for my business for me. Now, the purpose of parts therapy is sort of multifold, okay? We want to understand what's been preventing you from taking the actions that you need to take on your goal or dream at that deepest subconscious level. And then we want to help that part find another way of operating in a way that actually helps you. And that is the key, guys. I find that these parts, they actually love to work for you. They really do. So most of the time, I'll say not all of the time. And of course, there are protocols that we go through for these exceptions. But most of the time, they are on your team. This part is on your team. The fear is actually on your team. The self-doubt is actually on your team, even if it doesn't feel like it. I'm sure it feels like fear and doubt are trying to thwart you or work against you. But most of the time, I find that they want to help you. They just don't know how. They've been working super hard, but kind of in the wrong direction, right? And that's part of the problem. They've been doing their job so well. They've been working so hard, but the instructions that they've been given are simply out of date. So what they're doing ends up not helping you. It ends up hurting you, right? And I think what's really interesting is that we find that most of the time, the instructions that they're operating from came from childhood. That's why they're so out of date, right? A part may have developed when you were 7 years old, right? And it was thinking that it was protecting you. That's why it came to be. And I would say in that brief moment in time, it might have been protecting you. It might have been exactly what your 7-year-old self needed. So let's give it some credit here, right? It's not the enemy. The problem is it was operating subconsciously, meaning beyond your conscious awareness within you all this time. And now you're 37 and it's still operating by those same outdated instructions. And you can see how that would become a problem, right? You don't dress the same way you were when you were 7. You don't play with the same toys you were when you were 7. You don't talk the same. You don't have the same friends. You don't have the same, right? So many things in your life have changed, although some of these belief systems have remained the same. And it kind of reminds me a lot of this healing. I'll tell you kind of a personal story, this healing that I had to do based on my upbringing in the Catholic Church. So before I tell you this story, I want you to recognize that it's my own personal experience. I by no means judge or condemn anyone else and their religious beliefs. What works for you works for you. Everyone gets to choose for themselves, right? We have that power, and I love that power. But personally, I grew up Catholic, and it was just sort of drilled into me, especially in my teenage years, young teenage years, that sex out of marriage is a sin, right? And a major sin, like a sin that would essentially ruin your life. That was the belief system that was sort of drilled into me. It was painted to be very, very scary. In fact, when I went to confirmation camp, I think I was like 14 or 15 years old, they had us over this weekend-long camp spend the first day to spend hours creating something out of clay that represented the thing that we loved the most in life. Like the thing that gave our lives the most meaning. And so, little 14-year-old Brittany, right? For me at the time, that was acting and that was theater. Like I loved to act. That was my passion. And so I created these like cute little theater masks because I was, and of course I still am, a total theater nerd. And my bedroom at home was like theater themed. And so I thought, oh, this little, theater mask statue is going to look so cute on my shelf. And I was so happy about this little art project, right? And I spent all day creating it. I formed it out of clay. I let it dry. Then I painted it. Everything. It was perfect. And so then the next day we show up, we arrive at the camp, and the camp director starts walking around. All these rows and rows and tables were all these statues that the kids had created in the camp. And they were all lined up on these tables. And the director says, every time you have sex, it's like a little piece of your soul, a little piece of what you care about most breaks off from your life. I'm not kidding you. At that moment, she pulls out a hammer in front of the whole group of kids. There were like 100 of us. And she starts smashing these statues to smithereens. Like pieces of hardened clay were like flinging off into the audience. It was like not safe. Like kids were crying. They were blasting the song Wake Me Up Inside by Evanescence. Which I'm sorry, that is actually kind of really, really funny. Like how emo of this Catholic camp. And so very 2005 of them, right? But it like turned into pure pandemonium. And this thing that we were purposely instructed to pour our heart and soul into was being destroyed. And we were told it was being destroyed because we kiss boys and girls, right? And so I know now as an adult, especially adult who's in hypnotherapy, I can understand, it wasn't right. No, it was not right, but I can see why they did that, right? They wanted to make a very strong, memorable, subconscious impact. They wanted to create a hardened belief system within us, and they wanted to shock it into us, right? That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to drive that message home that sex was bad and it would destroy you and it was evil or whatever, right? And it worked, man. Like, I will tell you, it worked. I was such a good girl for such a long time. Like, it makes me sad to think how well it worked. But here's the thing. No one comes back and updates you and says, oh, hey, guess what? Remember that old programming that said sex was bad and should be avoided at all costs? Well, now that you're like in a committed relationship and you're married, we as the church want you to do the exact opposite and have all the babies. Like, that camp doesn't exist, right? No one says that. No one came back to glue all the pieces of that statue back together at some later date in a really dramatic, traumatic fashion. No. So what's kind of interesting about all this, you all have heard, and I've shared with you, me and my husband's history with infertility. Well, the good news I can say is that we now know the medical reasons that caused it. But for a while there, I really worked on my subconscious mind because I knew that I had endured some of this sort of religious trauma related to this particular area of my life. And knowing what I know about the subconscious mind, I really wanted to heal that and those old instructions because I wouldn't have been surprised if my body was still internalizing that it's not safe to have sex or to have a baby, which, I mean, I was, not to get too personal, but like, we were being intimate together. So that wasn't an issue, but I was afraid that my body wasn't allowing me to get pregnant because like that had been instilled as such a fear, right? That old outdated message was hammered into me literally during these formative years. And so luckily I can say for me, that wasn't the case, but this work was very healing to do, right? The subconscious work anyways, and very beneficial. And so when we come across people who do have unexplained infertility, meaning that there's nothing medical that can be explained why they're having this infertility, this sort of subconscious block can play even more of a substantial role. So the point of me sharing this story is not to like shock you or trauma dump or anything. I'm perfectly healed from this now, and I'm very thankful that I took the time to do that work. Thank God. I can see it for what it was. And frankly, it might have worked at the time for them, but it had a very adverse long-term effect for the church. Like they lost me because of that, right? I'm sharing this story because I think it is such a great example about how we might learn an instruction at a certain age. And I'm sure you have some sort of memory that pops up for you that really hammered in an instruction for you. And then we can often forget to go back and update that instruction later. And this part of ourselves usually is very willing and very happy and very capable of operating in a new and updated way as long as we access it and communicate with it. It just needs the new instruction. And so we give that new instruction. We come up with that new instruction together during hypnotherapy. Now, sometimes, I think this is kind of interesting, sometimes that part of you that is fearful or procrastinates or this, it's just tired. It's just tired of making you scared. It's tired of doubting you, right? It doesn't even want to block this manifestation from you anymore. Like it's just tired of doubting. It wants to retire. It wants to sit on the beach. It just wants to let you move forward. And so in those cases, we sort of figuratively throw it a little retirement party. We send it out on vacation and the relief just feels so good. Like there's so much relief in that. It feels so good when your subconscious mind lets that resistance go once and for all. And then what's so beautiful about that is it opens up so much extra space and room and energy, for you to use in a different way. I've done hundreds of these sessions by now and no two are ever alike. Like it's just phenomenal. Like it's a fantastic tool for identifying the root of the fear and healing it on the subconscious level. And really, then utilizing that beautiful brain power that you've previously using to power that old fear and doubt. But now that the fear and doubt isn't using that power anymore, we can reallocate it to something that's helpful for you instead. So it's kind of a double win in that way. You feel it on both ends. Not only do you not have to spend all that energy being fearful and caught in your own drama anymore, but now it frees up that same energy to sort of siphon it off into the work that you want to do. And, this is the work that you do for your manifestation and your goal. That's why most folks find that it's so easy to take action on their goals after something like this, right? Because they have this part now working with them, working for them, rather than how it was before, which was working against them. So I hope you all understand as I kind of share these examples and go through this, that the subconscious mind, and I know if you've been listening to the show, you would understand this. But like I said earlier, it speaks to us in analogies and images and sensations and metaphor. It is not literal. Okay. I hope this goes without saying that there is not a literal part of you that's like a little paperclip in your mind. Or it can sound kind of crazy when you think of it like that. No, it's just the belief system, the operating system in your brain is trying to give itself sort of a figure or a form so that you can understand it and learn from it. And sometimes those parts don't make sense at first. But then later we reflect on them and we're like, that's so interesting. That's so clever. Like your subconscious mind is where your creativity, your imagination resides. So when it speaks to you through these different parts, it can be like so enlightening. So if you want to experience this sort of thing for yourself, if you think this would be beneficial for you, I would say this particular hypnotherapeutic technique is best done with a one-on-one hypnotherapist in sort of a private session sort of setting, because there's a lot of conversation that goes back and forth to understand and uncover it. And a hypnotherapist is going to be equipped with the skills that can help you do that. I will say I do sort of share like a shortened beginners type version, like a parts therapy light in my Be Confident in 30 Days course. So that would also be an option too. I'll link my one-on-one hypnotherapy sessions as well as that course in the show notes if you're interested. So let's talk about the next hypnotherapeutic tool, okay, I want to share with you. So if you want to overcome fear and self-doubt, I mentioned it's a 3-step process. We've already talked about step 1A and 1B, right? First, you got to get clear on what the fear is. That's 1A. 1B is then you rid yourself of that fear and self-doubt. And then step 2 is you replace it with what you want instead, which would be confidence, trust, knowing, capability, right? That's what we did with the parts therapy before. We didn't just say, don't be fearful, right? We said, hey, let's release this fear and then let's give you a new job. Let's have you do something else. Here's some new instructions. And that is sort of very closely mirrors a core tenet of manifestation. It is far more beneficial for you to focus more on what you want and less of what you don't want. I'll hear this in my client sessions all the time. I'll ask them, so what do you want? And the answer I'll usually get is like, well, I just don't want to live in regret that I didn't reach this goal. Okay. But that didn't answer the question, right? The question was, I asked you what you wanted, and then you responded and told me what you didn't want. But that's okay. That's okay. That gives us a clue, right? So as Abraham Hicks always says, right? If you know what you don't want, you know what you want. Or if you know what you want, you know what you don't want, right? So what do you want instead? If you don't want regret, perhaps maybe you want satisfaction or happiness or pride in yourself and that you reach that goal. I mean, of course, you probably want to reach the goal. That's something you want, right? So I want you to focus more on the confidence you're creating and less on the old fear and the self-doubt piece. When you think about that, you keep that piece alive. So whatever you focus on is where you drive your attention, your energy. That's what you keep alive. I want you to keep alive the confidence more so than keeping alive the fear. So, I mean, think of it this way. The only way to get rid of darkness is to turn on the light. Right? And so I like to talk about confidence because I think a lot of people, they get confidence wrong or they think about confidence in the wrong way, right? They think of confidence kind of like this bro-y quality, like Chad from accounting. He's confident, you know, ooh, puff out your chest, right? And we're so over that, right? We're done with that. So no, confidence isn't like that. It's your trust that you can handle whatever comes your way. It's confidence is your belief in yourself, in your dreams. It's your deep inner knowing. It's a vital ingredient for manifestation, by the way. It's your feeling and it's your belief that you can rely on yourself or in your dream or in something. It's your firm trust. It's the state of feeling certain about the truth of something. And in this case, it's the truth of your manifestation. It's inevitability of your manifestation. And that feeling of self-assurance that you get when you realize and you can appreciate your own abilities, when you can count on yourself. Oh man, that matters so much when you can bet on yourself. I remember the moment I felt like I could bet on myself when I was in Big Brother. And I didn't even really realize that I was lacking confidence until that moment, until I felt what it felt like to trust in myself and not feel like I had to trust in other people or this or that. And just say, no, I can get myself through this. hardship in this game. I remember that feeling, and it was the best feeling in the world. It's something I carry with me, even coming up on 3 years now, which is crazy. So again, first, we work on dissolving those old limiting beliefs. Parts therapy is one way to do it. There are many other ways. And then once those limiting beliefs are dissolved, we replace that neutral space that is left open to us with confidence. We build it up. And so one of the other hypnotherapeutic techniques that I really love for this is called the control room. Okay. Now there's many different versions of this technique, but essentially you go into a room, a space in your subconscious mind, and maybe you envision it as a laboratory. Maybe it's a sound studio. Maybe it's some other type of room where you can create and play, right? And then you crank up the qualities that best support you. Okay, you give your brain those instructions of what qualities you want more of. And then you live it out there in your mind. You feel those feelings. You build up those sensations. You test it out. You crank it up, right? Maybe you turn down the volume on the fear and the self-doubt, but you just decide to stop playing those songs, right? But you see how we're doing all this through metaphor yet again? It's the language of the subconscious mind. It's so powerful. It sends new instructions and builds new neural pathways within the brain. Now, to do this kind of hypnotherapeutic technique, there's many different ways you can experience it. You can do it one-on-one. There's also a version of this in my Be Confident in 30 Days course. I don't really talk about this course quite as much, and I'm not really sure why. It's a great course. It's fantastic. This course is available to purchase separately, or if you do decide to join one of my one-on-one programs, as of this year, so beginning in 2025, I'm including free access to all 3 of my digital products and courses for free as part of the one-on-one hypnotherapy program. It's kind of like an all-encompassing program now, which is pretty cool. So if you want to do one-on-one, then I would say hold off. Don't purchase the Be Confident in 30 Days course separately, because guess what? You're going to get that included, as well as my Confidence Copilot audio bundle, which is a confidence sleep hypnosis recording, a confidence walking meditation, a confidence subliminal audio, and you also get access to my Hallmark manifestation course, which is called The Journey. And that particular course, I've retired to the general public. That course you could only get if you work one-on-one with me. I no longer sell it separately. I save it just for my one-on-one clients. So something to consider there if you're looking to build up your confidence. Lots and lots of tools that can help you do that. Now, here's another kind of final hypnotherapeutic technique that you can use. Okay, so let's review our steps. Step 1B, step 1A is deciding what you're determining what and identifying what your fear is. Step 1B is removing that limiting belief, the fear and the self-doubt. Step 2 is replacing that energy and space and instruction within the mind with confidence. And, step 3 here is to use what your mama gave you. Or in this case, I should say what your hypnotherapist gave you. I want you to visualize yourself now that you have that confidence doing that thing, meaning reaching that goal, taking the actions that had previously scared you or that you doubted. Okay? I want you to visualize yourself successfully doing that thing that once caused you fear. Because as you continue to do this mentally, you will do it physically with more ease and comfort. That's why we do it. That's why we practice it in the mind first. Okay? This is a fantastic way to use hypnotherapy. I've talked about this in past episodes as it relates to sort of overcoming phobias and using hypnotherapy in place of exposure therapy. I know we've gone into that in detail, right? I think it's such a beautiful and safe way to approach this. And it has nearly the similar effects on the mind. I'll have to pull some studies. I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but I know there have been studies where they had basketball players do free throws, and some just imagined it in their mind and others actually physically practice. And their free throw percentage rate was nearly identical. So that just shows us that what we practice in our mind and what we visualize in our mind creates the same sort of neural pathways as physically doing doing it. Only it's such a better experience. I don't know about you, but I much rather approach, if I was scared of snakes, I'd much rather approach a snake in my mind where I could make it safe as opposed to doing it in the physical 3D reality. If it's going to create the exact same results. Like, why in the world would I tell you to go touch a snake in real life when you could visualize doing so in a state of calm and rest, in a state of nervous system regulation, in a safe state, in a state where you can associate safe and calm feelings with the action of seeing that snake or whatever it might be, right? And it creates those same neural pathways in the brain. Why do it physically when you can do it mentally with the same success? And it just takes less effort. You don't have to go out. You can just close your eyes and you can access this and do this whenever you want. Like, that's just so much simpler. Because the more that you face those fears, and I want to take back that phrasing of facing your fears. Like, I feel like that phrasing tends to have the subtext that there's resistance to it. So no, this is very different that's a very different experience because it's one that you get to create. You get to decide. Again, you're in the driver's seat, right? You get to decide how it goes because it's all in your mind. You're the one in control here. So you don't have to face anything. You get to create the environment that you're in. So let's just imagine that your manifestation is to manifest $5 million this year. Do you like how the dollar amount goes up each and every time I use this example? Why not? We like more money. So let's say you want to manifest $5 million. You've been making several million for the past few years, but you want to reach this new milestone, but you're kind of afraid, right? Now, I just feel like I need to add this in, right? If you are listening to this and you don't make that kind of money yet, you might be scoffing at me right now and be like, "Pah, Brittany, people who have made that kind of money aren't scared about making money. Like, they don't have fears." I'm going to tell you that is certainly not true, okay? And I know this to not be true because I work with many multimillionaire clients and they have just as many fears as anyone else. The only difference with them is that they prioritize working through their fears because they know that those fears are simply illusions. That's the difference, okay? They recognize there's a fear and then they do something about it. And that's what sets them apart from somebody who doesn't make, 3 million or 5 million a year, okay? So let's say that you have this big $5 million a year goal, this manifestation, and you're afraid that in order to reach this level of success, you're going to have to push. Okay. And that means you feel like you're going to have to push in your relationships and your health and your hobbies and your family. You feel and you fear that it's all going to suffer because of your pushing. That's what you're afraid of. And so with this final hypnotherapeutic technique I'm teaching you today, I want you to visualize running your business in a way that would net you this $5 million this year. Or whatever your manifestation is, right? It doesn't have to be $5 million. But visualize it going the way you want it to go, meaning that fear was false. It is false. That's what fear stands for, right? False evidence appearing real. FEAR. I love that. So in your mind, there you are, you're in charge, you're in control, you're in the driver's seat. You get to visualize yourself manifesting that $5 million this year in a way where there's zero pushing. So if there's zero pushing, which means no pushing, what is there, right? There's ease. There's flow, there's support, there's a higher impact. The impact that you have on other people is so much greater now because $5 million just isn't just money, right? It reflects the number of people that are in your programs now. It reflects the number of customers you have or clients you have, the people that you're helping, right? It's such a fulfilling experience. So I want you to really visualize that. And you don't have to see it. You can simply feel it. You can sense it. You can experience it. You can see it in your inner mind. You can even imagine that you're seeing it. It has the very same effect in your subconscious mind. But I want you to do this practice again and again and again because repetition is the key here. And there's a very important reason why this works. Because the more that you do it, the more familiar your brain becomes with that new instruction. The instruction for ease and flow and, impact. The more the brain says, oh yeah, okay, I can see it working out that way. You're right. You want to prove your brain wrong, right? That becomes the new normal now, not the fear scenario. And it's simply because, the only reason the fear scenario ever felt real was because you were rehearsing it and thinking about it all the time. You were practicing that. It felt more familiar than it felt real. It was never real. It was just familiar to you. And so we want the brain to feel and associate safety with the accomplishment of your dreams. And we do that in your inner world, in your subconscious mind first. And then that translates to your outer physical experience. So you do that again and again and again. It's familiar to you now. You show up to your team meeting on Monday. You share your plans for 2025 with your team. Your team is there for you. They're supportive of the growth. They're ready. They're rearing to go. They have their own ideas. And your brain goes, yes, we've been here before. We know this. I visited this scenario in my mind. I know what to do here. I know I can let this be easy, right? That doesn't mean there won't be work. It just means that there's a sense of ease that you bring to it. That's what you bring to the table. Now, if you want to practice this technique, it's actually quite simple. I have created a free hypnotherapy audio that will guide you through this exact visualization process. It's my free ultimate manifestation hypnotherapy audio. Now, if you've been listening to this show for the past few weeks, you've been hearing me rant and rave about this fantastic audio. I will not shut up about it because it is so fantastic. I'm just so excited by it. It is a very heavy visualization audio. So that's why I think it really, we talked about this 3-step process. Step 1, eliminate the limiting beliefs. Step 2, replace it with what you want instead. Step 3, visualize that in your inner mind to create it in your inner reality. I would say that this audio does a little bit of step 2, but is mostly focused on step 3. Okay. So if you want more support with step 1 and with step 2, then check out the show notes. There's information about one-on-one sessions, hypnotherapy sessions. There's information about the courses. But for step 3, take this next step in your manifestation journey by downloading this free audio. Okay. The link is in the show notes as well. Plus, since you're a podcast listener and you're extra special to me, I've also created a fun little bonus tracker that's going to help you stay accountable and focused on the repetition that is required with this work, right? That's how we build up familiarity and safety in the brain. And we can associate that familiarity and safety with our dreams. I kind of like to think of it it's like a little kid who goes to daycare for the first time, and the mom drops the kid off and the kid cries and cries and cries for mama, right? The daycare's new. It's scary. It's an unfamiliar place. It's natural to be scared with the unfamiliar. And little kids, they're just pure subconscious minds, right? You're a pure subconscious mind until you're 7 years old. So no wonder they react in this way. But after a few days or a week or a month of being dropped off each day at daycare, and that little kid sees all the fun toys and all the fun friends and the nice teachers, that's when the kid realizes, oh, there's actually nothing to be scared of here. I like it here. This is familiar. Now it's safe. And what you know, there are no more tears. There's no more fears, right? And so your brain is like that little kid, only instead of daycare, we're going to be dropping you off at destination manifestation, right? We're going to drop you off at your dreams. And I want you to get familiar with them so that you're no longer scared. Whew, guys. Great work today. I hope you're proud of yourself. Utilize this 3-step process I taught you here today, okay? Use those hypnotherapeutic techniques. It's going to help you navigate through it. Download the free hypnotherapy audio. Give it a listen, or 30. I suggest 30 listens or more, right? And just watch as that old fear and that old self-doubt dissolves right away for you. Oh, I can't wait to hear how this happens for you, okay? And I'll catch you in the next episode.